As I walked past Khangsar, with Mount Tiricho standing ahead of me and the Annapurna range rising like a gigantic wall of snow to my left, I came across a gateway that looked exactly like the entrance to a Tibetan-style Buddhist shrine. The deep blue sky, the bright white clouds floating above me, and the strange beautiful shapes they were forming made the whole place feel almost unreal. Honestly, it was the kind of view that leaves you struggling to find the right words. As soon as I stepped through the gate, I realized my guess was right. A huge Buddhist shrine complex spread out in front of me. Far below, the Marsyangdi River snaked through the deep mountain gorge, looking like a thin white thread from where I stood. Under the sunlight, its waters glittered like silver. And then I looked across the valley. A massive mountain range stretched endlessly in front of me, rising so high that it seemed to touch the sky. The upper slopes and peaks were covered in snow, while the lower sections were wrapped in dense pine forests. From a distance, the whole mountain looked like a giant moss-covered boulder that had been sitting there for centuries. I slowly made my way towards the spot where the Buddhist prayer flags were fluttered wildly in the strong mountain wind. The sound of the wind, the fluttering flags, the mountains, and the river far below, it all came together to create a moment that felt almost magical. Khangsar Monastery sits quietly at around 3,760 meters above sea level, just above Khangsar village in Nepal's Manang valley. It lies on the trail towards Tiricho Lake and Tiricho Base Camp, surrounded by some of the most dramatic mountain landscapes in the Annapurna region. At this altitude, everything feels a little different. The air is thin, the landscape is rugged, and massive Himalayan peaks rise all around you. The traditional stone and wood houses and the monastery itself blend beautifully into this harsh but stunning mountain environment. For trekkers, Khangsar Monastery is more than just a beautiful place to stop and admire the view. It is a quiet spiritual landmark along the route, a place where you can slow down, catch your breath, and take in the incredible surroundings before heading deeper into the high mountains towards Tiricho Lake. Standing here, surrounded by prayer flags, ancient-looking mountain architecture, and towering Himalayan peaks, you really get a sense of how closely spirituality and everyday life are connected in these remote Himalayan villages. The tall prayer flags standing beside the trail were covered with Buddhist mantras, especially the famous Om Mani Padme Hum. The simple, warm-hearted people of the Himalayas believe that when the wind catches these fluttering flags, it carries the mantras written on them straight to the divine. So as the flags dance in the strong mountain wind, it feels as if the chant Om Mani Padme Hum is constantly floating through the air. And it's not just mantras. Many people also write their own prayers, hopes, and wishes on these flags, believing that the wind will carry their words directly to the divine. With the prayer flags fluttering beside us, we continued along the narrow mountain trail. Our destination for the day was Tiricho Lake Base Camp. We still had a long way to go, but after roughly another hour of walking, we would reach Sri Kharka, where we planned to stop for lunch and take a short break. By now, we had climbed quite a bit higher. Looking back, Khangsar Monastery was still visible far below us. Behind us stood the enormous snow-covered wall of the Annapurna range, stretching all the way towards the sky. And then, leaving that spectacular view behind, the trail suddenly turned right and began climbing uphill. The mountains were getting higher, the air was getting thinner, and the trail was getting tougher, but we kept moving forward. After walking for a while, I reached a point where I was almost level with the top of the massive monastery. Just a little while ago, I had been standing far below, looking up at its towering structure. Now somehow I had climbed high enough to stand almost beside its pinnacle. It was quite a strange feeling. Keeping the top of the monastery to my left, I followed the trail ahead. Suddenly the path took a sharp turn to the right and started climbing steeply uphill. As I gained altitude, the monastery seemed to sink lower and lower behind me. Its spire, which had once towered above my head, now appeared far below and to my left. I climbed a little further and suddenly came out into a more open stretch. And there it was, Mount Tiricho. For the first time, I had a clear and direct view of the mountain. I had been seeing Tiricho since yesterday, almost constantly, but with every step forward, it seemed to become bigger, closer, and more imposing. Now standing here, I could really appreciate just how enormous it was. The view in front of me was simply unbelievable. The mountains seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction, and somewhere ahead, almost as if it were emerging from the very heart of Mount Tiricho, was the Marsyangdi River. From this height, the river looked incredibly thin, almost like a silver thread spread across the enormous landscape. Sunlight was dancing on its surface, making it sparkle like a long silver ribbon. But that tiny-looking stream would eventually travel for nearly 150 kilometers, winding its way through the Manang and Lamjung districts before continuing its journey down through the mountains. Ever since Chame, the Marsyangdi had been our constant companion. Sometimes we had seen it flowing peacefully beside the trail. At other places, it had rushed through the gorge with tremendous force, and sometimes, especially where the valley narrowed, it looked wild and almost angry, crashing through the rocks far below us. But now, from this altitude, the river looked completely different. Nothing more than a tiny silver line in the vast Himalayan landscape.